Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show. It's going to be, I think, episode 281, maybe something like that. Coming to you from the yard. I'm also trying a little something new where I'm actually uploading this as a live stream on YouTube. So I am 100% committed. Can't jump ship at this point, but I'm here in the boatyard, and yeah, it's essentially I'm filthy and I'm doing projects left, right, and center. And it seems like every single project that I jump on, which I think initially is going to be pretty easy, then suddenly gains momentum when I find more and more corrosion or this, that, and the other thing. So we're going to get into some of the projects, some of the issues, trying to fix some of the shoddy work that I did, I don't know, in the past, I guess. And I don't know, yard life, I guess. We'll get into some of that. And because I have a live stream going as well, I don't know if people ask questions or anything like that, then I will definitely try and answer some of those questions and all that sort of stuff as we go. But before I start, like I always say, if you want to help support this channel, this podcast, check out the links in the description, any of the videos, everything like that. That definitely helps to get this boat back on the ocean, to hopefully create some pretty cool reference style content, and just share the experience of going way offshore all by my lonesome, which I crave at this point. So yeah, and plus there's lots of merch and lots of different other books and the coaching and the website, sailinginto Oblivion.com. All right, done. Promo over. Oh, Thomas Murphy is already in the house. God, he's such a legend. I absolutely love it. Hopefully my audio is coming in pretty good on the old YouTubes and not just on the... I've got my trusty Shure microphone here, which is just for the podcast recording. Everything else is just for the YouTube. They sent me some sort of little, essentially sent me some email saying that you could do a live stream in vertical, which means I can just use my phone instead of my computer. The only downside to this wonderful, beautiful boatyard that I am in, well, no, there's two downsides. One, it's not night marine service up in Rockland, Maine. Shout out to you, Tom. But also, the internet just doesn't really stretch very far. And that brings me actually to my first subject. So up at night, when I was working up there in Maine, essentially, you know, we had the back row. And I think pretty much every single boatyard has a back row. And by that, I mean the derelict boats, the boats that are neglected. Usually the yard owns them. Mango White Claw, Mr. Murph. And essentially, these are decrepit vessels that are slowly decaying into nothing. You know, a lot of them, the stands are pressing into the hull and dimpling it. It's kind of like the graveyard. The graveyard. Let's just call it that. Let's call it what it is. And essentially, my boat was not really in the graveyard when I was here a couple times ago, but they had to move it because there was one other big one that they were trying to get out or something like that. And in any event, I am relegated to the graveyard, and there is a reason why. Because Old Mighty Sparrow has not been in the water for like 18 months now. Like, time is slipping away, and it's kind of scary how much time has gone past. So I hauled out in May of 2023. So May 2024, May, and then so June, July, August, September, October. So that's 5 more. Yeah. It's right up there. It's like 16, 17 months. Oh, it's just, I don't know how it went by all that fast. I feel like I've been doing stuff, but I, at the same time, kind of feel like I haven't been doing anything because I haven't gone sailing. I mean, no, okay, that's not totally fair. I've been out on other people's boats, but Old Mighty Sparrow, this sweet old beast right here, she hasn't seen the water in so long. I don't know if she even remembers what it's like. And so I'm diligently and desperately trying to take care of all these projects that you can really only, you can't, it's not that you only can do them in the boatyard, but it's one of those things where the boatyard makes it super crazy convenient. And it's easier to work on the boat when you're in the boatyard because it's not moving around. You're not dealing with weather, you're not dealing with salt and all that sort of stuff. And so it just makes it a lot easier. And I don't know, today was just tackling winches and corrosion and all this sort of stuff, but we'll get into some of that here in a second. But yeah, essentially, so I'm on the back row. The boat right over here is I mean, like, it's got gaping 2-foot holes in the deck, completely rotted out. It has a power cord going into it, and there is a light on, but essentially anytime it rains, it's just filling up the water, and I'm pretty sure it's just a mosquito hive just sitting right next to my boat. And yeah, I don't like being over here. So again, with the goal being December as the launch date, after one more sailing trip and a couple more speaking engagements, then yeah, I mean, it's put it in the water and get a move on, get some more miles under her old keel, because I don't want to be in the graveyard. I mean, it's amazing how much wear and tear a boat gets when it just sits in a boatyard. I don't know if there is some heavy industry that is somewhere in the area. I'm out here in Belhaven, North Carolina, so essentially I don't think there's much, but there must be something, because there is soot that gets rinsed off of this boat. I've been kind of washing it down every other day, and I'm creating a lot of dirt and scrape, if you want to call it, just from all the work that I'm doing. But usually, you know, if you're rinsing your boat down quite often, you're not being able to see that black carbon come off. Usually I would see that when I was on boats in West Palm Beach and Fort Lauderdale, even in Beaufort, South Carolina, because they've got that marine base where they test out the Harrier jets and stuff. Man, those things were so loud. Boat is made for the water. I know, boat's made for the water. Thanks, Murph. And it's right there. It's just over that horizon. It's waiting for me. But it's like, it's not going to be till December. December is going to be ugly too. I have a feeling this is going to be one of those winters where we kind of get our retribution for such a soft and lenient winter last year, which, you know, I was up in northern Michigan for a good chunk of that, and there was one day in February of 67 degrees. So I don't know. I'm thinking that winter's going to come swift, and it's going to come pretty hard, which kind of could make my plans a little bit difficult, or at least a little sporty when it comes to wanting to go and do an offshore trip. I'd like to drop the boat in, and then with the first good weather window before Christmas, head out, aim towards Bermuda. If that works, keep going, and just get a couple, 4-6 weeks, something like that, of offshore sailing out in the Atlantic, maybe with a quick flyby in the Caribbean on my way back, to then just chalk it up into a marina for at least a little bit while I take care of a few other speaking things. But yeah, essentially, so we're sitting here in the graveyard, and I've got this big list right now of all the different projects that I had sort of planned out and everything. We stopped in Belhaven last spring. Yeah, Belhaven, it's the birthplace of the Intracoastal Waterway. It's wonderful, wonderful, very, very small town. Very. You do have Washington about like 30 minutes away, which is kind of nice, but you know, it's one of those things where most times I don't have a vehicle, but they do have a loaner here. TJ's Boatyard, TJ's Marina and Boatyard, I can't say enough good things about them. This place is absolutely weapon. If you're ever in this area and you're looking for a place to haul out and do some work on the boat, this is definitely a heck of a place to do it. I mean, dude, we're looking at this next week, 60s to 80 degree weather. I've got to paint the deck still. Got some yellow paint coming, baby. We're going to stick with it. I thought that when I did this next round of paint, I was going to go with something a little more moderate, but you know, I don't know. I just look at that yellow and I'm like, man, it makes me smile, makes me happy, and it's not hot on the feet. So the only kind of oddball thing with the yellow is I can never seem to get the same yellow from even the same kind of company. I used to do like Interlux, and then I've done Epiphet, and this time I had to go with something else. I don't know. I can't even remember what it is. It's coming, I think, on Friday. But because I ripped all the teak out of the cockpit, so we are quite literally a teak-free boat on the deck now. Thank goodness, because those suckers really love to leak on the old West sails. I mean, any boat that's, I mean, this boat was made in '75, so next year it will be 50 years old. And any boat that's 50 years old that doesn't have any leaks has been properly rebuilt or something. I don't know what's going on. Like that's even some of the finest examples of the West sails, and you know who I'm talking about if you're listening. Even those have a little bit of water coming in here and there, so it's just something we deal with. But in any event, it's nice mostly just because, one, it gives me a chance to paint the deck. Two, I like non-skid. I mean, I got the grip of a cheetah when I'm running about this deck and trying to douse sails and squalls or go up and shower, do anything. Like even on some of the varnished areas, like the turtle box for the companionway hatch and stuff, where I stand on that, I always put non-skid on that into the varnish as well, just because, you know, you never know when you might need that footing. So in any event, I digress. Oh, the projects that I've been getting into. I've had these couple of things, and everybody knows this. Everybody's got them on their boat where they know that they have to do this one thing, but they've been putting it off year after year after year. I've had a multitude of these on the boat, but there was one immediate one from a real big screw up that I had, which was my main halyard winch, which is on the mast. It's just a standard old Barlow, like non-self-tailing, old school winch. It worked great, but I was like, oh, I got this self-tailing winch. It's only one speed, but it's only a halyard, da-da-da. And it's a West sail, so it's not that big of a mainsail. In any event, put that thing on, and the drum's just too small, and it loads up right at the last minute. And even though I can physically pull it up, the winch can't handle it anymore. And the problem was, like, I had to put G10 composite. I put a plate of that on there, and I had to remount the winch with different holes and all that stuff. Long story short, I essentially had to drill and tap some new holes, which were offset a little bit, to put the old Barlow back on. And it was a risk because there were a couple of screws that just snapped off, because originally I got into this whole mess because I went to inspect and clean out the winch, pulled that off, and the actual bottom base, which was connected or sitting against the mast with a small plastic sort of spacer, had cracked because the corrosion had basically forced this thing, the center of it. And then when I pulled that off, I could dig down maybe 1/8 of an inch or something like that into the actual aluminum plate that's on the mast. Like, nightmare, right? And you know, it was described to me later that it was the perfect storm of what did they call it? The perfect storm of corrosion. Because essentially I had a bronze winch, I had stainless steel screws going into an aluminum plated mast, and then you add salt water to that, and essentially you're cooking every material in there, and the material that's going to give way is that aluminum, and it definitely did. So in any event, made some G10 plates to sort of separate things a little bit, and then thought it would be a good idea to switch to this one because it was self-tailing, and it's like, oh, self-tailing, that'd be convenient for a solo sailor, maybe. In any event, it didn't work out, so I tackled that one today. But I'd been dealing with that one for I don't know, somewhere around 3, 4, 5,000 miles or something like that. I tend to think of the issues that I deal with in miles, and that one's the least of it. Like that's a small annoyance to have going on that long. Well, the other one became prevalent and known to me long ago, actually, on the trip around the world, way back 2006-17, where essentially going through the very southern section of Tropical Storm Ophelia in the Atlantic, super powered up, reefing down, and there's two little winches that are mounted on either side forward on the boom. One's for the outhaul, the other one's for reefing the mainsail. And I think I was going from my first reef to my second reef, or maybe down to my third. It was the middle of the night, and essentially start cranking on it, cranked it a little too hard, and the thing pops right off. The screws were literally just tapped into the aluminum. There was no backing nuts, there was no washers, there was no backing plate, any of that sort of stuff. And I'm just thinking to myself, what? And this was again one of those things where I was like, man, I really didn't do a very good job of my own like sort of self survey of this boat. I mean, I'd been sailing on it for like 9 months. I'd owned it for 9 months, been sailing on it for, let's say, 6, and trying to find all the problems. But it takes a lot longer than 6 months to really find every little picadillo in an older boat. So in any event, out at sea, went and basically made a backing plate for the reefing one. The outhaul one did not rip off until a later date and a different trip, maybe 30, 40,000 miles later, but finally put a backing plate on that one. But I knew the corrosion was there, and it was bad. Like some of the holes had been like just ripped to the size of like a dime almost. And so not a whole lot of confidence. And the only, a boom is essentially a compression post. So it does have a lot of flex and bend. I've got a loose-footed main, so when it slats or when the mainsail slams, like that thing bends like a straw. But it's meant to do that. It's aluminum, and these winches are located far enough forward that they're not. If they were in the middle, I'd be very concerned about having holes in the middle of the boom. Not that concerned because they're really far forward. And so I went and I wanted to do this out of G10, but I didn't have enough on me here. But essentially I wanted to do a G10 plate on the outside and then a G10 backing plate on the inside, and didn't have all that. So essentially, and the biggest thing is I just didn't want to drill any more holes. On a boat, when you have like either your mast or your boom or spinner pole, whatever is aluminum and it's a compression post, the less holes, I've always figured, in my own opinion, the better. And if you can reuse the existing stuff, please try as best as you can. And that's me saying it to myself. And even though I had to reach like way in and now my arms all like sort of scratched up and stuff, I could just barely get the nuts on. I was able to use some, I think I ended up just using starboard 1/4 inch or something like that, because essentially all I'm looking for really is a way to seal the whole area, and I want it to be just a little bit flexible so it could take the shape of that boom. And it actually worked out pretty good. Tons of Tef gel, lots of 4000 UV protected sealant, and yeah, we're looking pretty darn good. I finished that one up today. I did the first one yesterday and just sort of dove right in. I mean, now after the day I've gone and pressure washed and everything like that, and the boat's all clean again. And I should have taken a quick video of what the deck looked like, because I had so many tools out, especially once I switched over to the tap and die set to set up for switching out the other winch on the mast. Like it was kind of cool actually to see that many tools that were all just getting worked up there, and just freaking aluminum shavings and sawdust and this, that, and the other thing up there. And I don't know. I mean, it feels good to be able to make that sort of visible progress. But essentially, yeah, I mean, so the winch on the mast I've been dealing with for 5,000 miles or whatever. The winches on the boom I've been dealing with for 50, 60,000 miles. Just knowing that backing plate, that the wood one that I put in originally, could so easily just pop out. I think it was marine ply. When I yanked it out, I mean, it wasn't in bad shape. It wasn't rotted. It was definitely deformed a little bit from the washers like digging into it, but the corrosion was still happening because I had neglected to be able to seal everything off. And that's one of the big things when you're trying to bed something, when you're trying to seal anything, you have to do a proper job on it, or else it's that water's going to get underneath it, and it's just going to keep cooking, keep fizzling, and that corrosion is just going to get worse and worse and worse. And then when you least expect it, that's when your boom snaps, and then you got to deal with that whole situation, which I don't know. When I think about it, if those winches, if that area, a foot back from the gooseneck, if it snapped right there, cracked or whatever like that, it would suck. It would not be a fun thing to have happen, 1,000 miles offshore or anything like that. But at the same time, I think the protocol, because I always try and have like the game plan in the head. I think the protocol would probably be to just sail, cut it down, and then sail with the first reef in. Hopefully, if that's still an option. Hopefully you wouldn't have to go down to the second reef, but that'd sort of be my game plan, rather than try to come up with like a strut, unless I had like the perfect materials to be able to sleeve it and keep the original length. Because I don't know, the first reef on my mainsail at least is not very big. It's pretty small, so it wouldn't affect things quite so heavily. So I don't know. That's the winch debacle. Now, looking into the next, and well, I guess before that too, the other big one is all the hatches. So Mighty Sparrow carries with her some of those old school wood hatches, which look really beautiful when they're varnished and everything, and they're traditional and they're the original ones and all that sort of stuff. But you gotta maintain, and I don't know what it is about the sun down here, the sun, the heat, who knows, but here in the Cape Hatteras sort of area, it is brutal. And I normally just use classic varnish, get it up to like a mirror shine and 8-10 coats, whatever. All that stuff peeled up. Gosh, what's a good metaphor for how it peeled up, or a simile? It peeled up like a rotten egg shell peeling up. It was gross, and it's all coming up. It's all over the toe or cap rail right now. Is just an absolute mess. But that one I'm taking a different tact with. So in any event, when this happens and the wood starts drying out and all that sort of stuff, you either sand it or you just watch it degrade to a point where, because some of this has like the black caulking in it and everything, and if it dries out and it shrinks and deforms, then you're going to lose all your seals and all that sort of stuff. So anyway, jumped on that one, but I used a different type of varnish this time. I used matte varnish. I think it's Epiphet's, if that's the way you pronounce it. That's the company that makes it. But normally I just use like a high gloss varnish, and all I had on the boat, because I'm assuming that's all I could get at the local West Marine, which is more fishing based or powerboat based. And I was like, well, I want to get this started. I'll just throw that as my base coat. Sanded these things all down to bare wood, and it came out looking really good. I couldn't believe it. I was like, dude, this kind of looks a little better. It almost looks like I don't need non-skid, although I know I will eventually. But I've only got 2 coats on, and it seems to have saturated the wood really well. It's not that sort of spotty kind of look that 2 or 3 coats of high gloss looks. It looks really even. It almost looks like stain at this point, and I'd never used it before. I mean, I used Cetal, I've used all these different things, and yeah, it worked out really well. So I think I'm going to do one more coat, but I have to reinstall all the latches because they're these old school ones. You know, the new nice hatches and things like that, modern hatches, you know, they have the little latches you can open up from down below. Also, these are wood, they're boxy, so most of them have between 4 and 8 stainless steel, you know, not latches, but when you put it down, then you put a pin through it. Because my forward hatch, when I go out to sea, that thing is like, it's put together with nuts and bolts. Like, that thing is not opening back up. And then the aft hatch with the lazarette, I have to go in that one every once in a while because that's also where the propane tanks are and all that sort of stuff. So that's a little looser, and it's more protected from the elements. That forward hatch, it's got a good bit of freeboard on it, good like 3-4 inches, and I do worry about it. So I do have a plug, so to speak, that I can essentially put in place of that and screw it in. So if a big wave were to rip that sucker off, which it absolutely could, I can at least plug that 18-inch by 18-inch, if you will, gaping hole out of the foredeck and feel like I'm going to make it through the storm. And you know, that's something I've always had on the boat, and I hopefully never have to use. It's like a life raft or a flare or an e-perv, you know. This pretty little thing that you try and keep maintained, but you hope you never ever have to use it. Cheers to that one. Jeez. But exterior varnish, use only 2-component varnish. I gotta move in closer. Varnish, use only 2-component varnish. Light sand once a year and 1 to 2 coats. 1 to 2 coats. I usually do like 10 coats. But that's when I'm trying to do like a insane varnish job. Now I'm with you on that. I've revarnished. I've stripped and revarnished my cap rail on this boat 4 times, and I won't do it again. I'm switching. At least right now, I'm letting the old stuff peel off, and the plan is to use teak oil on that. But I don't know how long that's actually going to last. I kind of have a feeling that I'm going to go back to some more varnish, because it just looks really nice, and it's just a pain if you really want to do a good job on a wet sail, because the stanchions are mounted to the bulwarks on this boat, and they're pretty much pressed right up against that cap rail. You kind of have to remove them, and that's a pain because then you got to rebed them so they don't leak, but that's also a really good time to repaint the bulwarks, and I don't know, that's one of those things I really I haven't done it in a couple of years, and I know I really should, and I know I'm gonna want to once I lay down this fresh coat of yellow non-skid in the cockpit and all around the deck. So it's gonna be one of those things where I'm gonna try and utilize the time as best as I possibly can. But the last and most crucial project, I think, the one that I've been dealing with for a long time that's just steadily gotten worse, has to do with the Aries windvane with my old pal Mongo. So Mongo, somewhere on I think it was the 2021 trip, I started to first notice the thumping noise, and it took me a long time to isolate exactly what I was dealing with and what it was that was going on. But essentially, you know, the mounting of the Aries is big clamps. It mounts right to the lower side of the boomkin. That's super solid, but there's all these plastic bushings, and essentially every single day you're supposed to a couple drops of oil here, there, and everywhere, so that those plastic bushings don't get worn out by the aluminum and the 100% constant, never-ending motion of this mechanism. Well, in the whole center to connect the hydro blade, which goes into the water, that pivots and then moves to the gear, the servo pendulum gear, and all that sort of stuff. It sits on this huge stainless steel pin. And there's basically two arms that go up and wrap around it. And those arms, which are from the actual hydro blade that goes in the water, have worn down their bushings. Just like a 1/32 or 1/16 of an inch, but enough that when it pivots, it allows enough play so that it goes thump, 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 thump. And then when it pivots back, thump, 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 thump. And it's just enough that, I mean, I can hear absolutely everything on this boat. If I know when this boat is running like 100% smooth, there's nothing going wrong with it. It's so ingrained in my brain of, I don't know. I could hear a cotter ring drop from a foot onto the deck in a raging gale. And I'd be like, what was that? That wasn't a wave. And so in any event, it's been super annoying to have to listen to that while you're sitting there trying to sleep. And for the longest time, I contacted Aries a long time ago because I bought a brand new unit from them in 2016 when I requested sort of the parts kit to be able to replace, a few of the bushings and things like that. They complimentary sent me the whole thing, and I was like, sweet, oh man, this is great. I can do like a full rebuild. I got all the spare parts I need. Everything's still working on it great. But for some reason, I don't know, I was like, I don't think I have the right bushings for that. I don't have the right size. And I swear I looked at this thing over and over and over. There's been a million yard periods where I'm like, I think this is the year I'm going to tackle that Aries. Because it still functions, it's this annoying thumping, and it's not good because it's getting worse. Well, finally today, I went through the bag, and I did a little deep dive in there, and I did some measurements with my calipers, and I found that, yes, indeed, I do have the two bushings that it will take to be able to clasp or replace the ones that have sort of worn out to the point where you get that fore and aft motion that creates that thump. Now, to try and take apart the Aries is a bit of an endeavor in itself. Ideally, it's best to do it in a workshop. I am not removing that thing again from the boomkin. I did that 2 times ago when I was here, and in order to rip all the decking out, I had to pull the entire boomkin off, all that sort of stuff. I'm definitely... if I can get away without having to do it, that's the plan. So, but it involves using a lot of heat because you got to try and expand the aluminum. This stuff's like inch thick aluminum. I think it's anodized aluminum, if I'm not totally way off on that. But essentially, you got to heat all that aluminum around there. It's this big stainless steel pin. It's probably 6 inches long, maybe 3/4 of an inch, if not more, wide. And essentially, you got to knock that sucker out of there. And once you get it knocked out, then you can go ahead, put the new bushings on, slam it back in there. I only have 2 bushings that I need to replace. But if I'm able to do that, then we're looking pretty darn good for a really, really enjoyable trip. I mean, weather, dependent, the good, the bad, the ugly with that sort of stuff. I'm not too fussed about that. It's more about the boat running really well and taking care of some of these issues that I've sort of just put up with. And I don't know where that mentality comes from, because I know that, one of the biggest worries when you have issues that you've let sort of fester is that when the weather does get really bad, then all of a sudden you're sitting there and you're wondering, oh man, I hope that corroded boom doesn't snap, or oh boy, I hope the wind vane doesn't start malfunctioning because I've let those bearings run out, or blah blah blah. There's a million sort of things that, if you have an issue, if it's at all possible to be able to fix that issue, replace it, do any of that sort of stuff, really got to try and jump on it as best as you can. And I think it was Rutherford who, one time was talking about dismastings, and he was kind of saying, and I think it was from his own experience, or maybe it was some people that he knew, but essentially there was a dismasting of a boat, nothing really huge or anything like that, but it's obviously a nightmare, and it was all caused from some stupid little stainless steel plate that was connecting one of the lower shrouds or the upper shrouds to the actual mast. Something that, you know, might cost $20 to get, you know, at some place. It costs you $50 in West Marine. No, I'm just kidding. But essentially taking that look and being like, oh, okay, well, this thing's like 15 years old. It's a little tiny piece of stainless. Yeah, I guess it looks all right, but I know I've also used and abused it. Maybe I'll just replace it. That actually is a really good mentality to have, because if it's something that you know has gotten a lot of use, I mean, think about your running rigging or your standing rigging. What do they say? It's 10 years or 50,000 miles, something like that. Where if you've got regular, you know, normal wire standing rigging, that's about all the use you're going to get out of it. Now you can get more out of rod, but it has to be inspected and all that sort of stuff. But essentially, if you're getting to those points, it's all well and good if you're just out there and the sailing is fine and the weather's fine. But the minute you go offshore and all of a sudden you got, you know, force 10 gale bearing down on you, and you're in the thick of it, the last thing you want, and I've done this plenty of times myself, you're sitting there thinking like, dang, I should have fixed that. Is it gonna hold? I don't know. I can remember looking at some old sails one time and just being like, oh my goodness, that thing is about to just explode. I have no faith in you anymore. And it's kind of funny to think about, but at the same time, it's kind of scary to go through. And I've done that because I was really stretching how long those last sails that Svenny made for me. Oh man, I mean, I got out of the mainsail alone, I got about 70,000 miles or something like that, and never had to take it in for repair. I mean, I had to repair it a little bit, but now that we have a brand new mainsail and we have a brand new staysail, all I have to do is find a spinnaker and do a little bit of on boat sewing for the old drifters and things like that. You know, it's always good to take a look at it because, man, it's such a pain. Again, here's another instance. I got this beautiful sailrite machine. It's old. I've had this thing since 2012, 13, something like that. I don't even know. No, I've had it even longer than that. I got it for being down at Bitter End so long ago, and essentially, it must have been like 2008, something like that, and it's still just going strong. I gotta yank that sucker out, oil her up. It's so much easier to fix sails on land than it is out at sea. You have just an insane amount of room. I can take it up on deck. I can go and take it over to the grass yard over there. Oh, let me read this. Maker says there's a little black box on the boat in which you place chits for every maintenance thing you do. Ooh, chits. I love chits. Throwback to Waterworld. Then when the shit hits the fan and you have to pay the piper, you have the coin. Nice. I like that. Ow. Super. Thanks, Russ. Hit my head. Yeah, that's I would probably, instead of chits, I'd just have another beer or something like that, or maybe a White Claw. I don't know. Well, either way, it's a good idea because, you know, you got to have that little attaboy. You got to have that sort of momentum that you can sort of build up. And I do find that that's one of those nice things that when you're in the yard, it was kind of funny. So when I first got down here, I essentially started, I'm looking at my list, and then I'm looking at the boat. And I hadn't been on the boat in, it was only like a month or something, not even, since I had been back here. And I'm looking at it, I'm like, man, I got to clean down below. The deck is absolutely filthy. I got this big list of all these things to do. And I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, there's just, where do I even begin? And I find myself, I get a little trapped when there's so much to do. And then I kind of remember what I usually tell people, because I think in some respects, when you do a lot of coaching and all and instruction and even just like the speaking stuff, even though I was told the opposite of, don't believe the stuff you're peddling, I just happen to actually think that, yeah, I wouldn't try and tell somebody something that doesn't make sense. And one of the things I always say is just start with whatever you can just to get the ball rolling. And actually, it was this light right here was hanging and like, and again, it was doing that for a lot. And I had to pull it off and just tighten the stupid little nut and then screw it back in. And that started the ball off. And then I went from there and I went to do a quick cleanup, get any residual mold out of the boat in here, do a little vacuum, make it smell nice, get the fan set up, which led to, cleaning the deck and then updating the list and blah, 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 down the line. You get the snowball effect, essentially. And it was nice. After today, I definitely feel like we've got some momentum, and the projects that I'm desperately trying to get done on this yard period, because I got to be out of here to drive north to go speak at a school. I leave on the 6th, so I have just under a week, and I'm hoping to be able to lay down one coat on Monday, one coat on Tuesday, and then I drive up on Wednesday. Or no, sorry. Yeah, okay. If I can do one Monday, a base coat at least in the cockpit, which is all white at this point, then do a full coat fore and aft with non-skid, and then Wednesday do a final coat. Then I can kind of leave the boat for, I think I'll be leaving the boat for just over a month. Which means, when I get back, it's going to be filthy dirty again. It's a vicious cycle I can't escape from. But that's all right. Once we're in the water, that's going to be the breaker. And if, I don't know, a lot of different stuff can happen. A lot of different opportunities can come up. And then all of a sudden I, can't go out sailing for as long as I want to. But I think just get float, get on water, go to marina, go south a little bit. That's sort of the game plan at this point. And, I'm desperate. If it doesn't go in, I always told myself if I ever didn't go sailing and I hit the 2-year mark, that means it's time to realistically start thinking like, you got to sell this boat, dude. Because think about it, 2 years is a huge chunk of your lifetime. Let's say it's 3% of your lifetime, 4% of your adult lifetime, 5%. I don't even know. And that's way too much. Way too much. And I would never want to deprive Sparrow of the ocean. Moreover, I wouldn't want to deprive some young, starry-eyed sailor from trying to realize their dreams. I know a lot of people get all crazy when they talk about like selling their boats and stuff, and then they don't want to sell them to the wrong person and all this sort of stuff. But it's one of those things where, I don't know. I mean, I'd like to sell it to like some young person who's like, dude, I want to take across ocean, In reality, anybody who's willing to buy it, I would probably sell it to them. Not that I'm going to do that or want to at any point right now. Jerome, where did you get the chart that you use on your chart table video? I need one. No, do not sell a boat. I won't. I'll try not to sell a boat. Let me check what number that one is. Going back. 4002. I believe it's one of the Admiralty charts, but it's if you just go and I don't know, search chart number 4002, it is Pacific Ocean and from Australia to Cape Horn. It's a pretty big one. It's just for passage planning stuff, but there's I think it's 4,000 is the entire world, but that's almost totally useless. I mean, even on an around the world trip, your daily, if you do a noon sight position on it, I mean, you're talking half a centimeter apart. It's kind of insane. On a chart like that, I might actually, on an ocean crossing or something even more substantial, it would be like every 2 days, maybe every 3 days, I would put a chart, I would plot it on there. Typically on my chart station, in my nav station, I'll have about 10 different charts on there. So let's say I was going to try and redo the Atlantic figure 8. So I would have the big scale chart that is the partner to this one. I think it's 4001 that shows the Atlantic and Indian Ocean. And then I would have the North Atlantic, and then I'd have the South Atlantic, and then I'd have probably 2 or 3 more closer in ones to different areas like the Cape of Good Hope or the Falklands or any of those things. My chart table is always pretty busy with charts. Plus, I always like, even when I'm out at sea, to just, you get those beautiful, gorgeous, calm nights where it's a really, really steady sea state. It's not wavy at all. You got a light breeze. The boat's like it's on rails. You know, you might have the leeward portholes open. You know, you turn on some of the cool lights, and then you've got your chart tables, and you have some coffee, or maybe have a beer or whatever, and you're out there. You're doing it. You're on the water. It feels amazing, and you're staring at a world chart, plotting and planning. Like, the coolest part about that is when you're way out there, you're kind of like, dude, I could go any of these places I want. Like, look at this. Look at my playground. I've always thought about it that way. It's like, look at this playground I'm in. And even though the scope and scale of it's just insane, I mean, the oceans are just the biggest, widest, open places in the world, there's still something cool about seeing your little position and the big old ocean and the little tiny continents, and you're like, man, that is just absolutely dope. All right. Oh, we got Murph chiming in. Greetings from Rockland, Maine. Where is everyone watching from? Murph gets so bored listening to me talk that he wants to start chatting with everybody in the chat, and he's worth it. Let me tell you, he's the oracle. You can ask him any questions, and he will give you an answer, whether he knows it or not. The oracle will provide. Oh, man. But yeah, so glad to get this little podcast out and do the live stream. I had that video. I don't know if anybody came across it lately, but it seemed to just, I don't know, pick up. It's every once in a while, it's kind of weird. Every once in a while, some of these videos that I made years ago, all of a sudden we'll start to receive a bunch of comments and things like that. And there was one I made about 3 different misconceptions with solo sailing, and it talked about sleep, and I can't even remember what the other subjects are, but bang, that thing has been just going bananas for my channel lately, and the comments are kind of rolling in. I'm kind of like peeking at them, but I'm kind of, I don't know, because there's some negative stuff in there. People like to troll you a little bit, and so I'm I don't know, it's kind of interesting. I was thinking about going through and essentially reading through some of the comments, the good and the bad, but I don't know. You know, I figure, why draw attention to that, even if it's good? Yeah, you know. I think every once in a while, and I haven't done one of these in a while, maybe I'll do it pretty soon, where I'll scour through all the comments on all this sort of stuff and look for the actual quality, good questions or insight that people are trying to find out, and then work, you know, basically answer all those as best as I can. Like, one of my favorite things from the past bunch of talks that I did at all these schools, and these are kids from like kindergarten up to 8th grade, has been the block of them, and even the next 2 that I'm doing are still in that same age group and stuff. But essentially, the Q&A sections are absolutely hilarious. I mean, these kids get wrapped up in it, and it'll just go and go and go. And I know they're not in class. They get out of class and listen to this story and watch these video clips and all that sort of stuff. And I mean, you know, I'm not saying I'm some great speaker, but I you know, I can tell a good story, and if you can keep a room full of kids engaged, that's saying something on its own. But essentially, Q&A would go on for like an hour, and then after that, I get surrounded by more questions, and kids are so funny because I think I mentioned it on the podcast with Heather, the most recent one. Boy, she does have a great voice. I was listening to that, and yeah, there was somebody who emailed me and said, hey, your cousin has a voice to do any sort of character in any sort of animated movie she wanted to, and 100% right. But I was saying, yeah, it's so funny when kids come up and they're like real serious, and they're like, I have like a 3-part question. And they just fired out there like a reporter at a press conference or something. I always thought that was pretty cool. But yeah, so that is pretty much all I have, because I got to make some food. I am hoping to maybe update my list a little bit now that I have tackled a few of these nasty little projects that have been irking me for so very long. But hopefully everybody enjoyed the show, not only the podcast but also the live stream. It's not the easiest thing to keep pumping these things out week after week, month after month, year after year, but it is enjoyable, and I do love the support. I love the feedback, and we're just trying to grow. If we can grow to a point where the boat and everything is sort of financially in a spot where I can really start using it and all that just constantly without sort of worrying about making ends meet, it's going to be pretty awesome. I'm hoping to be able to switch from like boatyard to marina and then to just adventures and bring it all to everybody. So big thanks to everybody for helping and sending me the good vibes. Appreciate that. And I'll keep doing the best that I can and keep pushing along and trying to keep it going. So everybody have a great and safe holiday weekend. I know it's Halloween. When I was a kid, I think, is it tonight, Devil's Night or whatever, was the night that you went and did all the mischief. Oh, long are the days. Growing up in the 80s, man, it was not too bad. Anyway, have a safe time. If you got kids, enjoy and take care of those precious moments. I know I'm missing all Heather's kids for sure this weekend, or this week. I guess it's midweek. Anyway, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. And until next time.